We're going to talk about cold email today. And we're going to kind of dive in. If you've been on one of these webinars before, you'll know I like to be super conversational and make it really interactive. And yes, Chris, we'll send you the recording. Can you guys hear me all right? Give me a yes in the chat. Can you hear me? Everything's coming in good? Okay, cool. Let's get started. So I want to deliver as much value as I can today for you guys in terms of cold email, but I always like to start with just state of the union. Okay. Outbound is a pretty tough game right now. The odds are stacked against us. What you're seeing there on the left from Clearbit, it's a stat on cold email. The odds of you getting a reply to your cold email are about 1 in 100. And that's not even a positive reply. That's just getting a reply of some sort. Cold calling, same kind of thing here. Odds of getting even a conversation, someone picking up your call, it's about 5%. Right? And then 1.5% according to Gong of when we actually do get someone on a cold call, converting them into a meeting of some sort, right? Outbound is super tough. And when we talk about where we're at today in the state of cold email, I think it's important to understand how we got there. And what you're looking at here is a list of all of the sales engagement tools on g2.com. And the way that we've sort of approached fixing the problem of outreach getting tougher is we've said, hey, you know what? We're going to fix this problem with volume. We're going to help you send 10x the volume of emails. We're going to help you 2 to 3x your activity on a daily basis. And basically what we've done, this was an image I posted this morning on LinkedIn, is we've made it really easy to do stuff like this. Let me know in the chat. What do you guys notice, good or bad? These are cold emails that I've saved from my inbox. What do you guys notice, good or bad? Drop it into the chat for me. What do you guys notice about these emails? Yeah, a lot of eyes, generalized. Yeah, it's all about the sender, Justin says. Loving the engagement today. We got almost 800 people on today. Yeah, it's generic. Nothing personalized. Yeah, just a lot of the same shit, right? Hey, Jason, I listen to, just reaching out. I know. I work with, I understand. The ones I highlighted in green actually stuck out to me though, right? Yeah, TJ pointed it out. Hi, J-Bay. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, in my headline, it says, call me J-Bay, right? And the other one that said, you're probably wondering why on earth I sent you this picture, I thought was pretty funny. I won't show the email, but the picture was really, really funny. Right. So those were just unique things that for me, I'm running a small business. I'm not getting nearly as much outreach as a lot of the executives that you're reaching out to. But I think it's super important that when we send emails, this is what we're competing against. It's not just our direct competitors. It's everyone else, including internal people trying to get into that prospect's inbox. And essentially what we've done is we've trained prospects to ignore us. And this whole mass blast approach, it's been dying a very slow death over the last 2 or 3 years. So what I want to talk to you guys about today is what I call the top performer gap. Okay, we're not going to spend time talking about cold calling, but I think it's important to understand that cold email is a part of a multi-channel approach that should include the phone and should include social. But what you can see there on the left, the average performer gets a 1% reply rate to their emails. Top performers get 10, 15, 20% plus reply rates. So I'm going to talk about the gap between those two things. And what we're going to talk about today is how to be less of a slot machine salesperson. I call it slot machine sales, people that just throw things up to chance and just send out as many emails as they can. And we're going to talk about more strategic types of approaches where we can play blackjack or poker. All right. And I've gotten to work with some pretty cool sales teams. I'm going to send you guys a document that we're going to go through today. You'll get like a worksheet and all of that kind of stuff. Okay. So there's 2 things that we're going to cover. One, I'm going to talk about reply method, the framework. This will help you get 5 to 10% plus reply rates. And then second, I'm going to give you 2 very simple strategies to upgrade your cold email game. All right. If you're ready to get into it, let me know in the chat. Just type in ready. You ready to go? You ready to dig in? Get some work done? Cool. Someone said ready to rumble. I love it. Okay. So let's dig into email. Let me know in the chat, how long does the average person spend reading an email? Let me know. How many seconds? Yeah, we got 5, 10, 20, 30. 3. So it's about 10.4 seconds. This is the latest stat that I could find on this. So the average person, when they do decide to open an email, they spend about 10.4 seconds. This is based on analysis of over 8 billion email opens. Let me know in the chat, what's the average reading speed of an adult? How many words per minute? Drop that number into the chat for me. Anthony Cook says 30. We're going to be in trouble as a society if people can only read 30 words a minute. No offense to anyone that reads at that speed. It's 300 words a minute. Okay, the average reading speed for an adult is about 300 words per minute. So, first key idea I want to share with you. Everything that we're going to talk about, especially around email, brevity is so important. The recommendation I used to give, believe it or not, was make it less than 120 words. And then a couple of years ago, it was make it less than 100. And then last year, it was make it less than 80. Okay? So 25 to 80 words or less is the sweet spot. And we're going to talk about how to get to that. So what I'm going to run you through is a quick framework that's going to give you kind of the outline and structure of an email. We're going to look at a couple more stats, and I'm going to show you some real examples of emails here. So let me grab the screen. All right, we're going to do a little whiteboarding here. All right. There we go. You guys can see the iPad screen here? Let me know in the chat. Is that showing up okay? Awesome. You guys are great. Okay. So a couple things with emails. Okay. I think one of the important things is if we're looking at an email, Google did some really interesting studies where they followed people's eye patterns when they read emails and articles and just how they kind of read things in general. And what they found is that people, when they look at emails, they'll typically tend to start in that first couple words of the email, and they'll end up reading it like this. All right. So they end up skipping to the end. If you're like my wife, Sarah, you like to watch movie spoilers and know what happens at the end. And you know what? A lot of us are like that too. We want to skip to the end. Let's get to the point. What is this person asking me to do? So the most important real estate in your email, it's that first line that's that attention grabber, and then it's the last line, and then people will typically fill in the middle when they read the rest of the email. All right. So in terms of the different components of the email, what I want to do here, by the way, this is not meant to be like, you don't have to follow this order. I want you to think of this more as a checklist. Okay. And this is based on just thousands of emails that I've coached reps through, and then also just hundreds of sequences that I've created for clients and all that kind of stuff. I started to see patterns in how the email was written, okay, and the different components. So reply is an acronym. The R, we're going to start down here, stands for relevant results. So one thing that's super important for your email is, and you guys are dropping in a lot of good observations and all that kind of stuff. If you drop them into the Q&A, so there's a button there on the bottom of your screen. It should say Q&A. If you drop it into there, it'll help me kind of filter out some of your questions. If you have them, I want to get to them, as many of them as I can. So relevant results, think of this as like social proof. Who have you demonstrated this for? And outcomes. So social proof, outcomes, who have you done this for? What outcomes have you created for them? Okay, so that's the first part, relevant results. Second part is empathy, is what the E stands for. Okay, and empathy is I need to talk to what common priorities and problems are that this prospect might have. Let me know in the chat. If you could pick any persona, any job title that you're selling into right now, if you could pick the one that you would like to do meetings with the most, those first meetings, or if you're a BDR, people that you would like to set up these meetings for, let me know in the chat. What's that role? Cool. And we were like all over the place today. Yeah. So if we use CMO as an example, if we start to look at patterns in CMOs and across the different industries that we work with and all that kind of stuff, What we'll find is that there's probably commonality in the types of things that CMOs tend to focus on. So I'll give you an example. One of the personas I sell to is VP of sales, especially in SaaS right now. One of the things that's really a prominent trend and priority is getting account executives to self-source pipeline through outbound. And traditionally, it was 3x pipeline coverage to hit your target, and now it's more like 4 to 5x because sales cycles are growing, deals are taking longer to close, there's more multi-threading, all of that kind of stuff. Right. So I know that any VP of sales I reach out to in SaaS that has a decent sized sales team, they're probably going to be focused on that priority. So you want to think about what are the patterns and commonalities between prospects. So that's the E. Next part is the email needs to be personalized. Okay. I think the common misconception here, we should define personalized. Really what we're looking for is something that is relevant to the individual and their job. Okay. So it doesn't need to be the person's favorite sports team, where they went to college, any of that kind of stuff. And again, if you guys got questions, I'm seeing some good ones pop through, drop them into the Q&A if you could. I want to get to as many of them as I can. So the personalization piece, I want to find something that is relevant to why I'm reaching out. Okay. So the best way I could describe this is I like to use the word evidence. Okay. So if I am reaching out, and I'll just use a customer example. So I have a customer that sells into VPs of customer support and support leaders. They're running big contact centers and they're doing all kinds of stuff. But one of the primary things that they're focused on is reducing cost to serve. So in other words, how do we get fewer customers to call into our contact center and to self-serve through chat, automated chat, through FAQ pages, whatever it might be. So the personalization, I'm going to look for instances where they might be attempting to reduce cost to serve. So do they have an existing chatbot? Do they have FAQ pages? When I go to contact them, is there a way that they're trying to deflect calls? Right, I'm going to look for instances in which the prospect is showing evidence that they're focused on that priority or problem that I can help. Okay. I'm not much of a fan either, George, of the old chatbots, but it's a thing that people are doing. So personalized, is it relevant to the individual? It doesn't have to be something about where they're from or where they went to school, nothing like that. I want to find stuff that's connected to those priorities and problems. Okay, these other two are a little bit more general. The L is for laser focused. And there's two parts here. One, we talked about ideal word length being 25 to 80 words. The second part that's super important here is 1 CTA. So I can only ask the prospect to do one thing. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that we would want to limit the ask to one thing? Let me know in the chat. So in other words, I'm not going to ask them for a meeting and ask them to check out a case study. I'm going to do one thing. Yeah, it's simple. Cognitive load, Sahil says, that's exactly it. I want to reduce the amount of work that it takes to figure out what to do with this email. We're going to talk call to actions later today in the session, but I want to reduce the cognitive load and the effort that it takes to respond. So an exercise that you can think about is sit in the shoes of your prospect and think about what the user experience is like of dealing with and responding to your prospecting outreach. So literally sit down and think, hey, if I got this email, what are all of the steps that I need to go through in order to figure out what to do with this email? So if the steps are, I got to visit this link to see if it's credible, then I have to click on a calendar link, then I got to book, that's too many steps. So I want to reduce the amount of steps that someone has to take in order to figure out what to do with this email. 1 CTA. Okay. And the rule here is I can always send another email. Okay. So if I have case studies to share and success stories, that's great. Make that one email. And then in a second email, you can bump it and ask them what they thought of the case study, or you can ask them for time, right? Don't do all of the same things in that one email. Okay. You can always send another email. So that's the L. And then lastly, the Y is for you oriented. A lot of you guys pointed this out. That's how many times you use I versus versus you and your. So a good rule of thumb here is that if you use I more times than you use you and your, the email is probably too self-interested. You're probably focused too much on yourself as the prospect, okay? So Lester says, yeah, I sell to CSO, so links and attachments are immediately ignored. What's your take on offering the one CTA if they're interested in the case study? So the big thing that I would do is once you get a reply from a prospect, then it's usually okay to directly link to something. Okay. So if I'm going to send a case study, don't link to the case study in the first email. Ask them if they would like to receive it. So I can end that email with, hey, would it be okay if I sent the case study over? Or can I send the case study over from our work with Gong and Medallia? So Carla asks, thoughts on attachments? Don't use attachments in emails, especially in cold emails. Try to limit hyperlinks and attachments. It'll save your deliverability. Cool. So this is the structure. Okay. So I'm going to walk you through examples of this in action so that you can see it. Okay, so let me share my screen here. And there's a couple things actually. There's a couple things I want to point out. We'll come back to that here in a second. So before I show the emails, one of the things that's super important, so I'll give a quick shout out to Lavender and the folks over there. One thing that Will Allred shared with me in a podcast, he said, hey, our stats are showing that prospects are 8 times more likely to open on mobile and 3 times more likely to send from a computer. So in other words, a lot of times the workflow is I'm reading an email and figuring out what to do with it on mobile, but then I reply to it on desktop. Okay. And by the way, this is not an example of a good email. This is just an email that I pulled that I received. And you can see what the difference is on mobile versus desktop. Look how cluttered that email looks on mobile. So good rule of thumb is I want the email to fit on a cell phone screen without scrolling. The other thing too, Vidyard had some really good stuff I think they did with corporate visions, where again, they followed heat maps of what people look at on emails. And you look, that example at the top, people tend not to scroll too far to the right. So remember, when someone's looking at an email on desktop, like there aren't paragraph breaks or line breaks, excuse me. If there's multiple sentences in a paragraph, it'll just go clear across the screen. Right? So the red is really where we want to dial in our message and make it very skimmable, very short. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of examples, okay? All right, let me open this up. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to share this document with you guys too so that you can check it out. I'm going to wait until a little bit more towards the end to do that. So I'll have a little kind of guide and stuff like that I'm going to share with you on reply method. This is the framework that I just walked you guys through. Here's some good questions and things like that you can ask yourself. And let's look at an example. All right, so these are real examples of emails that landed meetings. I removed some of the information though, just for privacy reasons for the company, and I changed up the names. So here's an example of the reply method in action. Okay, so this is to a VP of customer support. This is a made up cost reduction initiative where we changed the name. Well, it's a real cost reduction initiative and we changed the name. And I want you guys to take a look at this. All right. Let me know in the chat, what do you think worked in this email? What do you see in action from what we've talked about? Yeah, shows you did your research, 1 CTA, it's brief. Yeah, it's got social proof, relevance right off the bat. Yeah, there's no I's in the email, 1 question. Yeah, good stuff in the chat. Okay, so one thing that Remy said that I think is super important is Remy said it's casual and sounds more genuine. So do you see how it's in very conversational language? And let's look at the word count on this actually. So 68 words minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What's that? 61 words. So it is a nice and, as Austin Powers Gold member would say, toit like a tiger. It's a nice, tight email, right? So you see that this is called out here, your personalization, the empathy and priority and problem. And a little shortcut here for you, Eddie, because a couple people were asking if you do Shift Command C on a Mac at least, it'll pop up with us so that you can do word count real quick. So this is what customer support leaders tend to be focused on. They're trying to reduce incoming support calls and pushing customers to self-serve. Here's a common challenge they run into. Here's social proof on how we do it. Worth a quick conversation, right? Short, sweet, straight to the point. We're going to talk about subject lines here in a second. Okay, that'll probably be the last half of what we do today. But you guys notice, what do you notice about the subject line actually? Let me know in the chat. What do you notice about this subject line? Yeah, it's direct. It's focused on them. It's no more than 3 words. Dude, it's super short, right? Super, super short. So I showed you those. Here, let me just drag this over. So if you look at these a little bit closer from what we were looking at earlier, these subject lines, dude, these do not look like subject lines that I would get from someone that I know. Jason, is your podcast on TikTok? Are you creating podcast clips? They could have just put podcast clips. Outbound Squad podcast clips as the subject line. Have you tried TikTok? Buyer beware, hoping to help. These are just not, these are not subject lines that I would use or that people that I know that are emailing me, subject lines that they would use. So I call these boring subject lines. And again, I have a framework for this I'm going to show you guys. But if I can make the subject line about them and I can do it in less than 5 words, those tend to have the highest open rates. I literally just put the name of the initiative, their initiative, into the subject line. All right, let's look at another email. All right, good stuff so far. Again, if you got questions, throw them into the chat for me. Or sorry, throw them into the Q&A for me. Stephen Hunter asked about PS. I'm actually, before we look at this email, I'm a big fan of PS. So you could do something like this too. PS, you could say, um, you could do something like this. A PS could be a case study. It could be an ask. It could be something like this. Something like that. There's all kinds of stuff that you can use in the PS line, but I'm a very big fan of the PS line, Stephen. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. There you go. Okay, let's take a look at this next email. So this is a play that I suggest every single one of you run if you have not. The play, I'll drop it into the chat, is past employees of current customers. So on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, they actually make it very easy to do now. What we can do is we can look at, so if we put past company in that filter in Sales Navigator, we can put our company's clients into there, or that segment's clients. So if you sell into healthcare, let's say you can put all the healthcare clients that your company has in there. And then what you can do is you can look for people that used to work at a current client of your company's. Yeah, Timothy's been doing it a ton. It's great. And so here's an email that you can use to leverage that play. So again, I'm going to reach out to people that used to work at a current customer of ours. And the social proof there is usually really, really good. Okay. So again, I'll give you guys a second to look at this email. Let me know in the chat, what do you see in action about this email? Why do you think it worked? Is there something here that you feel like you could steal and use for yourself? Let me know in the chat. What do you like about this email? Why do you think it worked? Chris says, I like Steve Madden shoes. Yeah, it's relatable, simple subject line. It's all about them. Yeah, it's totally relevant. I love how conversational this email is too. Hey, curious if you remember your time at this other company, right? I imagine a huge focus of yours is this. So that's the priority in action, right? And then here's the problem. And then some quick social proof with some outcomes, right? Very, very simple. So Henry says, I'm not sure I understand the open line. So this is the company. This is the name of the solution, or sorry, the name of the company of the rep. So in this case, Meredith. I just hid her company in here. And this is the company that the prospect used to work at that is a current client of ABC Company. So ABC Company is Rep's company from your time at so Katie used to be an employee at this current client. Cool. Yeah, no problem, Henry. Yeah, so there's some built-in credibility there. Okay. I'm gonna keep moving. Keeping my eye on the chat here. Yep. Here we go. Okay. Thank you, Tristan. All right. So what we have in here in this worksheet is a starter template. And again, I'm gonna wait a little bit to share this with you guys, just so it's not such a distraction. You guys can kind of follow along. There's a little starter template that you can use here. By the way, don't focus so much on the specific language around this. Usually that means there's a focus. You can reword that, okay? Persona oftentimes run into challenges with this. You can reword that a bit. This is just the nuts and bolts and kind of the flow of the email. You'll see that both of these emails use the reply method, but this email, I don't know about you, has a very different look and feel than this email, but it's following the same framework. Okay. So I cannot stress enough framework over templates and scripts. Think about the framework and the components. It's no different than a workout plan, right? There are many different ways that you can accomplish the goals you have around losing weight or building muscle or whatever it is. There's lots of different workout plans, but the same fundamental principles of, hey, I got to get to the gym a certain amount of times. I got to do a certain amount of sets and reps. I got to eat a certain way, right? All of those fundamental principles apply regardless to the workout plan. So don't stress so much on the workout plan itself or the template in this case. Focus on the fundamentals. Okay. And someone asked about bold. The stuff that I have in bold on these templates is just an example so that you can see it. Don't bold, italicize, don't do any of that kind of stuff in your actual cold emails. Cool? All right. Everyone still awake? You still with me? We're about to kind of go into the next part of this. Manuel says, yep, I'm awake still. Okay, cool. I want to go into the next part of this. And let me open up my stuff here. The next part of this, what I want to do is talk about how to upgrade your cold emails. Okay, and before I do that, I want to give you guys, I thought that you would find this pretty helpful. One thing that I always want to know is kind of baseline, how my emails are stacking up. So what you're looking at here on the screen, this is from outreach. I would say from the work that I do with clients, this is pretty accurate. These are baseline sequence metrics. So top line reply rate is different from email reply rate. Okay. So top line reply is if I sequence 100 people, what percentage of those reply? So if I put 100 people into my outreach sequence, let's say, in this case, top line reply would be 12 of them reply. But if I put 100 people into a sequence, I'm probably sending like 600 or 700 emails in total to all of those people. And that's the email reply rate. So top line reply, the number of prospects that reply versus sequence, email reply rate, the individual reply rate to the emails. So those are some benchmarks for where you want to be. Let me know in the chat, in terms of top line reply rate, are you greater than 12% or less than 12%? Let me know. This would be actual replies, Henry, not out of office responses or anything like that. Are you greater or less than? Cool. Sounds like we got some work to do. Hey, that's why we're here today. Right? Okay, cool. So I wanted to share that. It gives you kind of a good baseline. So let's talk. Michael says, you guys get responses. So, Michael, I hope you put into action some of the stuff that we're talking about today that should help you. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys two things that you can do. Along with that template, there's two really simple things that you can do to upgrade your cold emails. Okay. First one is subject lines. That's the first thing that we're going to dig into. So there's some really great data on this. SalesLoft did a really big study across 3.4 million cadence steps executed through their platform. So what you're looking at here is what they found is that when subject lines are longer than 5 words, they tend to have lower reply and open rates. And subject lines that were under 5 words, especially one-word subject lines, which I love using. One-word subject lines are awesome. They tend to have the highest open and reply rates. So these are just guidelines. Okay. If you have a really customized, tailored subject line that's to the individual or company and it's longer than 5 words, it's probably going to get open. Right. So 0 words is the biggest thing to be aware of, Ben. There's like a false positive there. That would be a blank subject line, which I don't suggest doing. So there were a lot of negative replies to that. Okay. Yeah, no problem, Ben. Okay. So before I dig into this and show you like the framework and some examples, I'm curious in the chat if you guys, for the persona that you shared before, if you had to use one word in your subject line, what's an example of what that might look like? Share it with me in the chat. If you had to use a one-word subject line, someone put please in all caps. Yeah, partnership. Yeah, connect, broken, email, testing, testing, ERP. So one of the things you might do is, what's the biggest problem that you solve? That could be something that you use in the subject line. Like if I was emailing someone about, and it was a sales development leader, and it was about cold emails, I might just use replies or opens. Free puppies, reimbursements. One-word subject lines are tough, and I'm not saying that you should absolutely use them, but they work pretty good if you can pull it off. Okay. So let's take a look at this framework, and then I'll share the second thing that we can do to upgrade our email. So let me share my screen. All right. You guys are hilarious. Okay. So boring subject lines. So I already shared the data from SalesLoft. I call these boring subject lines. Again, Will Allred, want to give that dude credit. You should go follow him on LinkedIn if you guys aren't following him. He's got a lot of great stuff on cold email. So to steal a term that he uses, he talks about internal camouflage. And essentially the principle here is, how can I emulate in my subject line in this cold email as closely as possible to what it would look like if they received an email from someone else internally. Okay, so internal camouflage. Okay, so here are some examples for you guys. So there's kind of like, you can think about what are the areas where I help. So for me, it would be prospecting, outbound. If you're a company that sells chatbots or helps people with problems that they have with chatbots, or to replace a chatbot, right? If you're someone that helps bring 24/7 response time, hiring, if you're helping with reviews. Yep, we'll definitely share the document with you, Sean. Yeah, so common problems is another one that I really like. Yeah, someone feel free, you guys, to drop Will's LinkedIn profile into the chat too. We got like 900 people on right now. I'll go blow up his LinkedIn. Let him know that I told you to go follow him. Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, guys. So common problems are a really great one too. And then if you have something that's personalized, like if someone reached out to me and put reply method in the subject line, I reached out to a sales engagement or sales enablement leader, excuse me. And one thing she put in her profile was that she loves bringing order to chaos. So I was like, wow, I'm going to use that as a subject line, right? Order to chaos, right? This was something that an initiative that someone talked about online when they were posting something or something they were really proud of. I can't quite remember, but how their team was 143% of quota, right? So boring subject lines, how can I, in less than 4, 5 words, capture the attention of the prospect, be super short, simple, all of that kind of stuff. All right, how are we doing on subject lines? We got any questions on this? I try not to overthink this. I don't want to burn any creative energy trying to be super crafty with my subject line. I want to err on the side of being obvious, and I want to make it about them if possible. Cool. Thank you, Billy. All right, let's keep rolling. So let me share my screen again. And there's another really very simple way that you can upgrade your cold emails. Yeah, that happens, Harris. It's all good. No offense taken. All right, let's take a look at this. So this is another very interesting area that very easy to fix and very easy to tweak your emails and get better responses is the call to action. So again, what I want you to think about is what are you asking the prospect to do? And oftentimes we ask prospects really big open-ended CTAs. So you can see here, by the way, the success rate is based on the number of replies, the percentage of those email replies that converted into a positive response. So a meeting, essentially. Okay. So when people used open-ended CTAs, only 13% of those converted into a meeting. So if you ask a really big open-ended question, something like you might ask in a cold call, like, hey, I saw that you guys have FAQ pages right now. I'm really curious how you're thinking about self-serve and deflecting calls so that people don't call into the contact center and can answer their own questions. That's a huge question that's great to ask in a cold call to get the prospect to stop, think, that kind of thing. But in a cold email, that requires way too much work to respond to. So I want to keep the amount of work that the prospect has to do. I want to really decrease the amount of work. So open-ended CTAs don't work that well in cold emails typically. Now, the specific CTA is interesting. The specific CTA is a specific ask for time. Let me know in the chat. Specific ask for time. Give me a yes or a no. Do you use this type of call to action where you say, are you free to chat tomorrow at this time or that time? Yeah, a lot of no's, a few yeses. Okay. All right. Alexandra says, my boss wants me to. So, okay, the point here is this may work for you, okay? The point is just don't overuse it, okay? So if you send 6 or 7 emails throughout a sequence to a prospect and all of them are just like hardcore asks for time, specific asks for time, are you available at this time? Are you available at this time? It just starts to feel like a lot of work to respond to you. These are okay to sprinkle into your sequences, okay? I know some of us like based on content you might consume on LinkedIn are like very anti asking for time. Keep in mind, just use what works for you. Okay. Now, the best type of CTAs, though, overwhelmingly are interest based CTAs. And it's just asking for interest. Okay. The psychology here is super important. Okay. So, saying yes to something small so that I can say yes to something bigger. Okay. The big thing that you want the prospect to say yes to is agreeing to a meeting. You know what? That's a lot to commit to. You're a stranger, you're reaching out to me, and you want me to commit 30 minutes of my time to chat with you? I mean, according to Rain Group, they did a big study on, I think, over 400 B2B buyers that were responsible for billions of dollars in purchases. And they said that 58% of the meetings they attend with salespeople are a complete waste of time. So you're already starting from behind the starting line. You're starting from a place of skepticism in sales, okay? So I'm going to ask them for something smaller. That's the psychology here. Get them to say yes to being interested and then schedule the meeting. Once a person has said yes, that they're interested, they're so much more likely to continue responding to you to coordinate a meeting, okay? So I know it might sound counterintuitive and that it's 2 steps to get the meeting instead of 1. But I'm going to ask for interest because that's easier to commit to. That's easier to say yes to interest than to a meeting. That's the psychology here. Nick, I love that one. I'm going to show you guys some examples, okay? So let's look at this. Let me share this. All right. Yeah, I'm a very big fan of those note-oriented questions, and I've seen a lot of success with those. Okay, so you got the stats here, the data if you want to take a look at it, but more importantly, I just wanted to make sure you guys had examples of different types of CTAs. So open-ended CTAs, again, high friction. How are you handling this? What are you seeing at your company? These are just very hard to reply to in an email. Interest CTAs, low friction. Lots of different variations here. Let me know in the chat, which one of these CTAs do you like the most? What's something that you can immediately start using in your cold emails? Let me know. Type it out into the chat for me. Jacob, ignore me forever or talk soon. I think, Jacob, if you can change the language up a little bit more to make it obvious that you're being cheeky and that you're joking, stuff like that can work for sure. Yeah, is this a problem you're having? Can I get to shot to share? Natalia says, worth a quick convo. Yeah. Scott Jones, I desperately need the sale. Please agree with me. Yeah. So Lydia Eager says, open to learning more is kind of the opposite of open is it's closed, which no one wants to admit to. I mean, this is where I would like kind of mix in no-oriented answers versus yes-oriented answers. And Chris Voss, if you've consumed any of his content, he's popularized the no-oriented questions, right? Because it's easier to say no to something than it is to say yes to something. So that's the would it be a bad idea? Would it hurt to share more? That kind of stuff. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. For those of you that have been patiently waiting, I'm going to drop the document into the chat. It's going to force you to make a copy of it. When you got it, put good to go. Give me a G to G in the chat once you got access to the document. I want to make sure that you guys are able to get access okay. Yeah, you'll have to keep your eye out, Sean, for the follow-up email. It says error due to heavy traffic. Yeah, sorry guys, we got almost 900 people trying to get into it right now. Save that link. I'll drop it again into the chat. Just save that link and you'll be able to access it later. And I'm going to email this out to you guys later too. Okay. So that concludes the content for today. So I think the big part, and I'm going to spend the rest of the time answering as many questions as I can. So if you got a question, please drop it into the Q&A. I'm going to try to rapid fire answer as much of these as you can. I think the big takeaways are this. One, keep the reply method simple and keep the template and the approach, keep it very, very simple, short, concise. Upgrade your emails with boring subject lines and tweak the call to actions and find something that works for you. If you're wanting help, by the way, let me I'll drop my email into the chat. Here, let me do this real quick. All right. So if you're wanting help with some of the stuff that we've talked about today, send me an email, jason@outboundsquad.com, and put coaching into the subject line. If you're an individual and if you run a team, put team, and I can get you some more information. We have coaching programs, training programs. I'm happy to share more free content with you as well. So just reach out to me via email and put coaching in the subject line if you're a rep, and then put team in the subject line if you're looking for help with your team. More than happy to let you know how we help. Okay, let's get to some questions. So if you got a question, make sure to drop it in the Q&A. I'm going to try to get to as many of these as we can. One thing that I would love your help with in the Q&A, if you see a question in there you like, upvote it. Give it a thumbs up. There are literally 78 questions in here, so I'm going to do my best. Roger asked, does this framework apply to LinkedIn? Absolutely. You can use the same framework for an in-mail, but if I'm sending a connection request, what I might do is just use that first line of my email. Hey, notice the cost reduction initiative. Would love to connect and share how we've helped a similar company with that. Right, I'm going to keep it really short, Roger, with LinkedIn connection requests. If it's an email, I can make it more formatted like an email. So yes, absolutely, this messaging framework applies across email, LinkedIn, and really it's the same kind of framework, honestly, that you would use in a cold call as well. Okay. Henry, do you do this for every email in a sequence? Great question. Spread across a sequence. How does this map to bump emails? So the stats on sequencing, it's very kind of simple. Okay. SalesLoft, Outreach, InsideSales.com, VanillaSoft, Apollo.io, they all kind of recommend generically the same thing based on their data. It needs to be multi-touch. So 12 to 15 touches. It needs to be multi-day. So that's usually across 3 to 4 weeks. And it needs to be multi-channel. So that's email, phone, plus social. So multi-touch, multi-day, multi-channel. The way that this breaks up that I would recommend starting with is 6 emails, 6 phone calls, and then 3 social touches. And a typical week would look like this: 2 emails, 2 phone calls, 1 social touch. So 5 touches per week for 3 weeks is what I recommend starting with. So you send an email on a Tuesday, which would be the long form email that you learned about today. And then I bump that email on Thursday with any thoughts or a variation of that. And then week 2, I'm going to focus on a different priority and problem that the prospect might be having on a new email chain with a different subject line. I'm going to send that on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever. I'm going to wait 2 days, then I'm going to bump the email. Cool. For bump emails, Claire, I like any thoughts. I'm a big fan of that. So any thoughts, question mark, Jason, leave it super short, simple. You can also just use a call to action. So your bump email to the first one could be one of the interest-based CTAs that we dropped in today too. Could be worth a quick conversation. Would it hurt to share more? This is a problem you're having. Cool. All right. Alexis, I feel like I answered your question. How often should we cold email a prospect? 6 times over the course of 3 weeks is a good place to start. All right. Alex asks, how would you suggest segmenting your email sequences and cadences to help personalize at a larger scale? So this is a great question. So Alex, what I would think about, and for the rest of you, is I would think about tiering your prospects. So A's, B's, and C's are 1s, 2s, and 3s. So I'll give you an example. So for me, I really want to get in touch with like someone that's like a director of sales, a VP of sales, or a CRO. But I'm really doing a first meeting with a CRO at a large company, at least. Usually I'm getting my foot in the door with a director. Sometimes a sales manager comes inbound, whatever it might be. If I'm doing outreach, what I'm doing is I'm prioritizing my A's on the people that I really want to meet with. Those are the people that I'm going to put extra effort in. So that's probably your VP of sales and your director of sales are my A's. Those are the people that I'm going to do personalization in that first email with. And I might personalize every new email that I send over the course of those 3 weeks. So I'm going to send a personalized email and bump it in week 1. And then week 2, I'm going to send something different. I'm going to personalize that and then bump it, etc. And then for sales managers, let's say that I want to get some intel from, it might be a mostly automated email sequence with very few calls. So I'm going to tier based on who do I really want to meet with and where does the extra effort actually pay off. That's how I would think about it. And in terms of achieving personalization at scale, which I feel like there's a lot of controversy around that topic. People think that that's not possible. You can definitely personalize at scale. It doesn't mean that it's automated. It just means that you're really good at detecting patterns. So what I would think about is what are the 2 or 3 most common situations that the prospects you're reaching out to are in that you can tailor based on those situations. So an example, I give you my client that sells into customer support. One thing that they're always going to look for is, do they have a method on their website that they're using to deflect calls? If they do, like a chatbot, that's the thing I'm going to point out, right? And I can do that for every single prospect I reach out to like them. We know that that's the thing that they're going to work on. The other thing would be in the 10Ks or quarterly earnings, are there cost reduction initiatives? That's always going to be something that I talk about. And you can find these patterns of 2, 3, 4 different things that your prospects tend to be focused on. Maybe it's hiring, whatever it is. And then you create patterns in place for those. And ideally, it's a sequence for each one of those that kind of does a lot of the work for you. So there you go, Alex. All right. Rachel, I already talked about email bumps. So I answered your question there. Matthew asks, hi, no name at the beginning. Is that intentional? Yes. So you notice the emails that I showed you guys, they all started out, hey, Jason, hi, Jason. One said, hi, Mr. Jason, which I thought was really weird. Mr. Jason makes me feel really old and really like a teacher almost, and it just feels really weird. I don't know why that person did that, but yeah, put the name at the end of it, Matthew, for sure. It's a pattern interrupt, absolutely. So that was absolutely on purpose. Melissa says, would you use layoffs as a relevant reason to reach out? That's a tough one. That is a tough one. So I think if you're helping with cost reduction, you got to be really careful about how you mention it. So, Melissa, if I'm reaching out to someone in HR, it might be, hey, saw the recent news, hope everything's going well with the team. In these types of positions, usually HR leaders are thinking about, how to maintain morale during these times or how to maintain and increase employee engagement. I don't know what it is that you sell, Melissa, but that's kind of how I would be very careful about how you talk about it. But it is a good reason to reach out for sure. Francisca, we talked about follow-ups. So Jennifer J asks, what if you do not have proof yet? Should you wait until you do? Yeah, in order to name drop, yes, but you can always talk about the outcome that you help with. So maybe I'm reaching out to a sales leader and I'm helping them, their AEs self-source more pipeline. If I don't have a specific tangible result, like we helped XYZ company increase the amount of pipeline they self-source from 10 to 30%, I don't need that. I could just say, we helped so-and-so company, or we're working with companies like to help them increase the amount of pipeline their AEs self-source. You could do something like that, Jennifer, that's a little bit more generic. Great questions, you guys. Keep them coming. Again, upvote the questions that you really like, and I'll try to get to as many of those as I can. Manuel, he asked about personalization. I answered that question. Rafi, what do you think about using funny memes or pictures in emails? Here's the thing. I think that most people, including myself, I did stand-up comedy for a year and a half or so, and I don't do it anymore. So if that's any kind of evidence as to how good or bad in this case I was at it, I noticed that people think they are funnier than they really are. And I also noticed that people tend to make jokes that totally fall short, and it's like an inside joke. And it totally misses the mark. So when you try to be funny, which I'm not a fan of trying to be funny when we're prospecting, being cheeky and fun and lighthearted is different than trying to tell a joke to make the person laugh. I would recommend not telling jokes and not trying to be funny. I think being cheeky is good. So to answer your question though about should I use memes or pictures, just keep in mind that every time you put any type of multimedia into an email, whether a picture, meme, or video, it's going to lower the deliverability and the open rate's going to be lower. So if you're going to do it, I wouldn't suggest doing it in the first email. Once a prospect has opened an email from you, it's more likely to get through their spam filter. I'll give you a hack. Before you send a video, ask the prospect if it's cool if you send a video over first. Get them to ask for the video. So the call to action could be, could I send over a quick 30 to 45-second personalized video to show you more? Get them to say yes to that, and then I can record a video, and they're much more likely to watch it. There you go, Rafi. Eric Anderson, what are you using ChatGPT for? To be honest with you, I haven't really used it a lot for prospecting. I've used it. I probably should mess around with it a little bit more. What I've seen it work really well is if you have an email template that's like 80% of the way there, you can throw it into ChatGPT and ask it to like make the language more conversational or to make it more simple. It's pretty good at doing that. ChatGPT is not great at coming up with organic ideas. So if you were like, hey, I'm reaching out to VPs of sales at SaaS companies that are 500 to 1,000 employees, they care a lot about helping their account executives self-source. Can you write me a cold email for this VP of sales at this company? It's really not that great at doing stuff like that. By the way, there are some companies using ChatGPT's API, and it's actually very scary what those emails are starting to look like. I think that in the next 3 to 5 years, cold emails are going to be something where you just have to kind of put the inputs, like what your prospect cares about, and it'll be able to write a really good cold email for you. It's still going to rely on great inputs, though. It's the whole garbage in, garbage out thing. So you're still going to need to know about your prospects, what they care about, all of that kind of stuff. So those are my thoughts on ChatGPT. I think you should be very scared. If you don't know how to send good cold emails right now and get replies, I would be a little scared if I was in that position. Okay. Pranay, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asks, how about competitor names in the subject line? And is it safe to use numbers? All of the data that I've seen from Lavender and SalesLoft show that when we put numbers into subject lines, they tend to perform worse. So keep that in mind. In terms of competitors, yeah, absolutely. You can put competitors in there. Alex Riley. Do you think it's best to reply to the chain of emails you've been sending or start a new one each time? So Alex, I sort of indirectly answered this question. It is, I'm going to send one email and then bump it once, maybe twice on the same email chain, and then I'm going to start a new email chain. So I don't want to have like 9 unread emails on an email chain. It's just easier to delete and send to spam and that kind of stuff. Taylor, what do you consider to be the best sequence as far as timing goes? I've already kind of answered that question, Taylor, earlier. Okay, Lester, we answered that question. Keith, yes, there's going to be a recording. I'll send it out in a couple days. Okay, Kieran, when it comes to relevant results, is social proof worth sharing if it's not? Great question. It is not worth sharing. So social proof is not worth sharing if it is not relevant. That's why the results piece is relevant results. I can't tell you how many emails I get from people that say, we've worked with Amazon and all these other companies. And I'm like, that's great, but I'm not Jeff Bezos, okay, or whoever's the CEO of Amazon now. I run a company with way fewer headcount and way lower revenue than Amazon and way different problems, very different business structure. So I do want to make sure it's relevant if I'm going to drop that in. So hope that helps you. That's all we got time for today. Appreciate everyone hopping on the webinar today. Again, we're going to send over the recording in a couple days. If you're looking for help, support, anything like that, you can email me, jason@outboundsquad.com. I'll drop that into the chat. Send me an email. Let me know if you're looking for help. We have coaching courses, all kinds of stuff. If you're running a team, happy to chat with you as well. And this is awesome. I appreciate all the engagement and have a good rest of your week, everyone. We'll see ya later.